Kamala Harris addressed a crowd at a rally. Here's what she had to say about high grocery prices that US consumers are facing today.
Many of the big food companies are seeing their highest profits in 2 decades. And while many grocery chains pass along these savings, others still aren't.
Later, Kamala Harris' campaign issued a press release. There, they outlined details on how they will fight food inflation. Here's one statement where they talk about how big grocery chains are earning record profits and refuse to lower prices. First, let's see what data is telling us. There are a number of publicly traded grocery chains, such as Walmart, Costco, or Kroger. Of course, they sell other things besides food. But let's take a look at their profit margins. Gross profit is sales minus cost of goods sold. Gross profit margin is gross profit divided by sales. If we look at many of these major companies, we see roughly the same gross profit margins. Even operating profit margins were more or less the same. About the same profit margins mean that these grocery stores earn the same 20 or 25 cents on every dollar of sales. Even if their dollar sales numbers are higher, their costs have gone up too. These could be higher wages or higher input and cost of goods that they buy from suppliers like farms. So it's not clear which grocery chains Kamala Harris is referring to. Maybe there are grocery chains that fatten up their profits and are refusing to lower prices. But does it make any sense? I mean, selling food is very competitive and most grocery players are trying to keep their prices as low and competitive as possible. What's more, it's very difficult to even stay competitive in the grocery business. Most profits come from either economic scale or extreme differentiation. Think of Kroger or Walmart as examples of scale. These companies buy thousands of items and bargain with suppliers for lower prices. Or think of your local small health store. Often it carries local higher quality foods that other big chains steer clear of. This form of differentiation allows smaller players to thrive. And what I don't understand is this. How can you force a private company to lower its prices at the expense of its profits if it can legally do so? I mean, there are of course cases of price gouging during extreme situations and emergencies, but we are not in one at the moment. Clearly, Kamala Harris is trying to address high prices that happen during her vice-presidency. We can argue why that is. Maybe it was snarled supply chains or huge amounts of money printed and given to consumers. Oil prices are higher too compared to 4 or 5 years ago for one or another reason. But blaming grocery chains for that does not sound reasonable to me. True, some parts of the food industry are more concentrated than others. For example, the meat processing industry in the US is highly concentrated, with 4 companies accounting for roughly 85% of all meat processed in the US. Those companies are Tyson Foods, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef Packing Company. These firms often face lawsuits alleging price fixing and other monopolistic behavior. Some of these lawsuits are dismissed or settled out of court. So maybe Kamala Harris should look into that as opposed to grocery chains. There were 3 actions proposed in the Harris-Walz campaign press release. First was to advance the first ever federal ban on price gouging on food and groceries. Price gouging is an often thrown around term, but what does it mean? Here's what to know. Price gouging often happens when firms increase prices to unreasonable and unfair levels. And this often happens during natural disasters. Many states have laws that forbid price gouging. For instance, take Florida. Florida forbids renting or selling products at unconscionable prices during emergencies. But the key is the meaning of unconscionable. It means a gross disparity between the current price and the average 30-day price before emergencies. Florida also specifically excludes certain situations. If a seller can show that he faces higher costs or there are market trends, then it's okay. Mike Pyle, an economic advisor to Kamala Harris' campaign, was recently on Bloomberg interview. There he said that they plan on having a price gouging federal law that is somewhat similar to what other states have. Okay, fair enough. But I don't understand how this helps in the current situation. I mean, we are not in a state of emergency, by the way, which you will have to define on a federal level. Bloomberg later pressed Pyle on whether he or Harris see any signs of price gouging right now in a food market. He avoided answering this question altogether. There was a second point that Harris' campaign made. They want laws to prevent food companies from exploiting consumers and rounding up excessive profits. I would say that this is probably the most controversial thing they said. First, how do you define excessive profits? Or what is the exploitation of consumers? There must be objective measures that will establish what those things mean. I mean, price gouging aside, I can't imagine what would that be. Is 2% too excessive in the case of Walmart? Or should it be 5% for Target? What if a company does something more productively and generates higher profits? Should we still punish this company and force it to lower prices? How do you distinguish between different factors? I don't know the answers to these questions, but we know what these initiatives can lead to, especially in centralized state economies. There, governments try to impose penalties on food companies that are generating excessive profits. And those initiatives very quickly devolved into criminal prosecution and price controls. One recent example involved crackdown by the Venezuelan government on high food prices. They established certain price controls that forbid companies to charge prices above certain threshold. The result? Food shortages. It is only natural for sellers not to produce or sell food or other items when the governments are trying to control prices. And it is especially true when there are justifiable reasons why prices should be high. Similar debacle happened with President Nixon in the 1970s. He established a 90-day freeze on wage and price increases. The result? Shortages ensued. Farmers stopped selling their cattle or producing anything altogether. Empty store shelves became the new norm. I don't think that Harris' campaign are talking about outright price controls here. They know that these things are unlikely to work, especially on a federal level. Finally, Harris' campaign made a third point. They want to empower the federal government and state attorneys to persecute companies who break rules. They probably mean price gouging. As for the other things such as excessive profits, they will have to define that first. Also, my feeling based on public info is that Harris' campaign is trying to downplay some of these initiatives that we just talked about. Generally, they will face an uphill battle in the Congress. And even if they make their way through executive orders, there will be battles in courts. The food industry, after all, will be there to defend its profits. And that is it for this video, guys. I hope you learned something new today and you liked it. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more interesting content on investing and economic topics. Thanks for watching.